been a few that might have been misogynistic, but in most part, I think the leaders were looking at this clearly, professionally.
Tonight, more on the aftermath of RoseAnne Archibald's removal from the Assembly of First Nations.
Je ressens un peu de la discrimination que les montants qui sont attribués ne sont pas touchés par les Autochtones.
Questions are being raised about who should compensate Quebec First Nations for losses due to fire. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. News about RoseAnne Archibald's ouster from the Assembly of First Nations continues to reverberate across the country. Judith Sayers is the president of the Nunavut Tribal Council, an organization that represents 14 First Nations on Vancouver Island. She was acting as a proxy on Wednesday's AFN meeting. She joins me now. President Sayers, thanks for being with us. You were part of the meeting. Can you tell us, I guess, your reaction to the national chief being ousted from her position?
Well, it wasn't anything I took great pleasure in, but I think it was a necessary move by the chiefs in Assembly.
Why do you feel it was necessary?
Well, the issues have been going on for a long time. Last July, when we passed a motion to retain RoseAnne as our national chief, but we wanted to have an investigation into the human resources complaints, so then we'd know the full facts. And that investigative report came before the chiefs, and that's when we made the decision, was based on that report.
Now, there is an AGA just less than 2 weeks away, I guess. Any idea on why the vote couldn't wait till then?
I'm not really sure. I think last July we ended up spending 3 days talking about the national chief office, and we never got any business done. I think the motion called for a special meeting of the chiefs to discuss this, and I think then it opens the 3 days in Halifax to get to the issues that we really need to talk about.
You represent 14 First Nations in BC. Were they all unanimous in the decision to remove Archibald from the position?
No, I just had a proxy like everybody else, one vote. And so everybody has their own. So we really didn't have a chance to discuss this before the vote took place.
I'm sure you've seen and heard lots from those who say that this decision was, misogyny played a role in this decision. Now, what would you say about that?
I would say that there might have been a few that might have been misogynistic, but in most part, I think the leaders were looking at this clearly, professionally, and looking at our future as AFN and what is it that we need to do to ensure that we can continue pursuing our rights and protecting our lands and territories. And I think that's where more people were focused, is let's get down to business. We need to do this now.
Archibald was calling for a forensic audit at the AFN. Do you think that should still go ahead?
Yes. And it is contained in a motion, that same motion from last July, that a forensic audit would be looked at by our constitutional committee, and they would bring a recommendation to the chiefs on whether that needed to be done. They are reviewing the Constitution, the policies, and trying to address some of the issues. So that is still on the table. It hasn't been taken off the table, but it still, is a consideration. And I think it should go ahead and let's put all these allegations to rest, or let's address them. It just depends on what the report says.
What are your hopes for the AFN going forward as a new interim national chief is selected here?
Well, my hope is that, things can settle down and we can do the advocacy that's needed in Ottawa, whether it's fisheries or forestry or climate change, the environment, the economics. There are just so many issues that our communities are facing. The opioid crisis, there's, and I'm sure that's why a lot of chiefs weren't on the line, because we have such huge issues that we're dealing with, and we need to be having those addressed, in Ottawa, in our provinces, and in our communities. And that's what we need to do, is just get down to work and start addressing these issues.
President Sayers, we'll have to leave it there, but really appreciate you taking some time for us today.
Sure. Thank you.
And now a message from RoseAnne Archibald's team was posted on social media this afternoon. It says that a video statement from Archibald is coming on Monday to, quote, address the great injustice against her, all women, and grassroots peoples, unquote. The post urges people to call their chief and council to ask how they voted on Wednesday in the vote that ejected Archibald from office. You can read much more about this over on our website, aptnnews.ca. To Montreal now, where cadaver dogs have found possible human remains at the site of the city's old Royal Victoria Hospital.
It's very important to understand it doesn't necessarily mean that there are human bodies located in the area all three teams identified, but it's certainly their function is to identify a specific odor in a target area, and these three sets of dogs did.
A group called the Mohawk Mothers allege Indigenous children are buried there. They believe the children died from the MK Ultra mind control experiments funded by the CIA and the Canadian government in the 1950s and 1960s. The Mohawk Mothers will decide next steps by July 14th. A deeper search of the site is possible. Now that Quebec's forest fires are spreading, new problems are emerging. For example, which government is responsible for compensating First Nations for losses incurred during the state of emergency? Here's a story by Shushan Bakong, translated and read by Maricela Amador.
Je ressens un peu de la discrimination, que les montants qui sont attribués ne sont pas touchés par les Autochtones, non? Comme nous autres ici à Malio ou bien d'autres dans d'autres villages. J'ai rempli la demande, puis il y avait une option là, municipale qui demandait les taxes municipales. Je pense que nous autres, on n'a pas le droit à ça, c'est tout.
François Jerome is Innu from Maniutanam. He is a single father of 7 children. The family was forced to evacuate at the beginning of the month because of forest fires near the community.
Ça a coûté quand même beaucoup d'argent l'évacuation. C'est sûr que j'aurais pu être évacué dans un aréna, mais le nombre d'enfants que j'ai, il était dans l'impossibilité. Moi, j'ai un enfant qui a comme, comment je pourrais dire ça, l'anxiété. Ça aurait été impossible. J'avais pas le choix de me prendre un hôtel.
An amount of $225 per adult and $125 per child under 18 were allocated to evacuate Maniutanam residents to cover for basic needs and transportation costs. Chief Mike McKenzie of the Innu, Dewegan, Washat, Makmani Utanam says that the difference in compensation will be given to his community within the next few days, which was evacuated from June 2nd to the 6th. And how to get access to those funds will be published on the Band Council's website.
Normalement, on devrait donner l'équivalence de 1500 par maison. Puis il y a comme une déduction à faire. Là, les personnes qui ont reçu le montant, le maximum, là, on pourrait donner ces 1500 $.
However, Jerome feels at a disadvantage when it comes to compensation versus the expenses he incurred during the evacuation.
L'évacuation, il va être plus avantageux pour la personne qu'une grosse famille. Sinon, les dépenses sont plus graves, incluant le gaz puis tout, sinon l'hôtel, la nourriture. C'est pour ça, sinon, le 1500, il est déjà topé, là. Sinon, moi, ça fait longtemps qu'il est topé, là. Sinon, j'ai rempli un formulaire qui était supposé de me rembourser l'hôtel, mais Je pense que j'aurai pas le droit à ça.
J'ai reçu l'invitation, ça me permet d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
APTN met with Quebec's minister responsible for relations with First Nations and Inuit at the Assembly of Chiefs of Quebec and Labrador in Quebec City. He says that he traveled to Pessimit, Chicoutimi, and Roberval to thank everyone who welcomed those evacuated by the forest fires.
Tous les gens qui résident au Québec ont le droit à cette aide financière en communauté, donc en terre de réserve. C'est Services autochtones du Canada. J'ai parlé à ma collègue Patty Haïdou qui m'a confirmé qu'ils étaient au rendez-vous. C'est un lien qui est normal. En terre fédérale, c'est le gouvernement fédéral.
But Lac-Simon First Nations chief denounces the lack of consultation between the federal and provincial governments regarding decisions on the amounts to be allocated to evacuees from his community.
Dans le moment, c'est le fédéral qui suit le Québec. Mais sans nous en avoir rien dit, nous aviser, rien du tout de la formule. Donc, on n'a pas été consulté ni avisé de comment les choses allaient se dérouler. On l'a appris par après.
After APTN contacted Indigenous Service Canada for additional information on the compensation process and eligibility requirements, the department said that First Nations can access funding through its Emergency Management Assistance Program by providing an inspection report that details the damages caused by the emergency situation. Furthermore, Indigenous Service Canada said that communities are encouraged to submit estimates or invoices as quickly as possible to help ensure a timely recovery. A story by Shushan Bacon, APTN National News, Montreal.
To Nunavut now, where the Territorial Planning Commission has a new land use deal ready for review. It's the largest land plan of its kind. Covering 3.3 million kilometers and 1/5 of Canada, the plan is the result of over 15 years of work. It includes Inuit traditional knowledge alongside scientific research. The plan sets out how Nunavut land will be used, including resource exploration and wildlife management. Now it will be reviewed by Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, the Nunavut government, and the federal government. It's a necessary step as Nunavut legally requires a land use plan under the 1993 agreement that created the territory. Time to step aside for a quick break. Stick around, there's more to come. Welcome back. Joan Phillip won a by-election this week, becoming the new MLA for Vancouver Mount Pleasant. Outgoing MLA Melanie Mark resigned the post, saying the BC legislature felt like a torture chamber due to the harassment and racism she faced. Tina House caught up with Phillip earlier in the week.
Thank you. We're so excited to be joined today by BC's newest MLA for Vancouver Mount Pleasant, Joan Phillip. Joan, congratulations on your newly elected position.
Oh, thank you. It was such an awesome celebration we had at the Vancouver Indian Centre. I had a couple of my nephews, Reuben George and Gabe George, drumming us in. And Reuben is Grandpa Dan George's actual grandson. Amy is the last of Grandpa Dan's children, and also known as Ta'a, so she was pretty proud. But the thing that Reuben said, and he quoted Grandpa's lament, and he talked about how we shall rise out of the sea like the thunderbird of old. And he talked about how our people would rule and be ruled and become members of government and law. And the final thing he said is that we'll become the greatest segment and strongest segment of society as a result of that. But the thing that struck me was I was the first one within the territory to make Grandpa's dream come true. So I'm just so proud, and Grandpa was smiling on us that evening, and it was such a beautiful celebration.
That's amazing. Well, you've certainly got some work in front of you now, taking over from our dear friend Melanie Mark, who stepped down because of the opposition, which she called personal attacks. And in fact, she quoted as a torture chamber when she was in office. How do you plan on handling those attacks coming from the opposition going forward?
Well, I can tell you, being a grandparent is very difficult. But the thing we have is what's called a Sia stick, and it's Saskatoon berry stick. And that's what I'm going to use in the legislature, because I can't believe they behave so badly. I thought, what are they, 10? So I'm going to bring my Sia stick into the legislature, because I think they need to smarten up.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of real work to be done rather than arguing with each other about, personal expenses and so forth, as Melanie said. What are some of the first things you're going to tackle once you get into that legislature?
Well, I got to get settled in first. But the thing that I heard from our constituents on the doorstep are three main issues. One is affordable housing and affordability in general. The other one is health care, and of course, finally, the opioid crisis. And as you recall, we lost a son to carfentanil, and if there had been a safe supply, he might still be here. He was 42 years old, Red Seal mechanic, left 6 kids behind. It's unacceptable.
Absolutely. Joan, you'll be the second woman now in BC as an Indigenous woman to be in the legislature. Congratulations, and we're also very proud of your accomplishment. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much. Back to you in studio.
Protecting Vancouver Island's rugged and fragile west coast is the aim of a new Indigenous lead pilot project. Parks Canada and the federal Environment and Climate Change Minister announced $500,000 for a unique corridor conservation project. The Indigenous-led West Coast Stewardship Corridor was announced this week at Parks Canada's Fort Rod Hill location in Colwood. The project will partner 13 First Nations from Victoria to Tofino with landowners and governments to help protect vulnerable ecosystems and animals.
This initiative aims to focus on shared responsibilities of all of us in order to allow the natural movement of wildlife, the wolves, the cougars, the bears, the salmon. They need long corridors to live and survive.
The corridor is still in its early planning phase, and it remains unclear how the corridor could look in the future. Right now, stakeholders say the plan is to connect First Nations and other partners to share knowledge about how best to protect the far west coast. Dr. Rachel Sinawasis is a dermatologist from the Muscopine Saulteaux Nation north of Regina. She says that eczema is becoming a huge problem for Indigenous peoples.
Eczema and then the associated conditions like asthma and allergies are consistently showing at the top chronic conditions seen in Indigenous children and youth across Canada.
Dr. Sinawasis says poor water quality and crowded living conditions in Indigenous communities make eczema worse. Compounding the issue, doctors in rural and remote areas are also not addressing the problem, something she says has to change. A number of Indigenous people have been given Canada's highest honor. We'll tell you who's on the list after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And Clarence Jones was somehow able to capture a close-up of an eagle posing for the photo. Clarence spotted this beauty along the Skeena River in the Gitxsan Nation. If you're out and about this weekend, take a picture and send it to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 25 with showers in Fredericton, cloudy and 23 in St. John's, 28 and rain in Kuujjuaq, cloudy and 22 for Nain. Showers and 25 in Montreal. Cloudy and 25 for Chibougamau. Rain and 26 in Sault Ste. Marie. Showers and 20 in North Bay. Rain in Thunder Bay. High of 22. 26 is the high with showers in Sioux Lookout. 31 with rain in God's Lake, Norway, House, Thompson, and the Paw. 29 in Winnipeg. Showers and 31 for Dauphin. 32 with rain in Regina. Showers and 29 in Saskatoon. Rain and 24 for Meadow Lake. 28 with rain in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, showers and 30 for Fort Chip. Rain and 29 in Fort McMurray. 19 with rain in Edmonton. Sunny and a high of 33 for Lethbridge. 29 under the sun in Kamloops. 22 for Vancouver. 15 with rain in Prince George. Showers and 17 for Smithers. 25 with rain in Old Crow. High of 13 with rain in Whitehorse. 22 in Yellowknife. Showers and 28 in Norman Wells. 18 and sunny skies for Sax Harbor. Sun's out and 14 in Pawlatuck. Rain and 16 in Chesterfield. 11 with rain in Arviat. Plus 4 in Resolute. 8 in Joe Haven. Well, with the worst wildfire season on record, all that smoke is causing poor air quality outside. Some people are staying indoors. And while it may make sense to hide out indoors, the air inside can also be affected. Heating and cooling expert Saman Barnath says it's important to keep heating and air conditioning systems clean. Changing filters can make a huge difference to the air quality in your home.
The other thing is that they can actually actively filter the air. Now, how well they can do that sort of depends on a lot of factors, including, the system itself, how good of a filter, how thick, and, the type of filtration it has, or if it has like an add-on air filter, which can then filter even more. So that can improve indoor air quality. So that's another, good reason why you want to make sure that those are in good working order and that you've, kept the filters regularly changed as well.
Governor General Mary Simon has announced 85 new appointments to the Order of Canada, and the list includes a number of Indigenous people to be named to one of the country's highest honors. Tom Wilson has been appointed as a member for his contributions to the arts in Canada, notably as an iconic musician and his advocacy for Indigenous communities. Former RCMP detachment commander and Blackfoot elder Harley Crowshoe from Piikani has also been appointed a member. He's also a member of the National Advisory Committee on Residential Schools, Missing Children, and Unmarked Burials. Artist Kent Monkman has been appointed as an officer for his achievements in the art world. The full list can be found on the Governor General's website. The Governor General will honor the recipients in Ottawa at a later date. And a huge congrats to all those who were bestowed with the honor. Well, that is going to do it for us here at APTN News on this Friday. There's a whole lot more over on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy, thanks for being with us. Enjoy your weekend.